even when you desire to escape the box that someone painted around you, all right, to be able to see the sky and to enjoy the stars and be free and all that stuff, remember that the sky and the stars and all that stuff was also already painted by someone else. Greetings, this is Eugene the Philosopher, the greatest living philosopher after the unfortunate passing of Quentin Robert D. Nameland, who has been the greatest living philosopher before me. In this video I want to talk about one political dynamic, like socio-political dynamic, which also has its shadow in a philosophical realm. Let's put it this way, like a philosophical generalization, which is even more grim. So this video is going to be very pessimistic by its by the very nature of its subject, and I can't really help it, to be honest. But maybe you'll get something positive out of it regardless, alright? Regardless of my efforts to make it very negative. So the dynamic I'm talking about is when something, like imagine a society needs something politically or symbolically, like to express their current mood, the society's current mood or something like this. So the society needs something big like this, like either a symbol or political event. And imagine when let's say the powers that be, even though I hate this term, but let's just run with it for the lack of a better term. So imagine the powers that be recognize this, that the society perhaps needs something like this, and the powers that be provide this something that society needs, but in a deliberately distorted and or cropped, truncated form, alright? So essentially in such a form that no real thing cannot be seen behind it anymore, basically a surrogate, alright? So basically a surrogate, like a forgery, like a false thing instead of the real thing, if you know what I mean, alright? So what does this allow them to do? Well, firstly, stay in control, because it's them who provided this thing, right? By one means or another, through their agents perhaps, or something like this. So, it's this kind of vibe, like if you can't beat them, join them kind of vibe, right? So even if there is something against us potentially, at least we're gonna intercept the discourse and make it our own creation in a way, right? So it lets them stay in control. Control is maintained because of this. So they can actually, this is what is called controlled opposition, right? So essentially, the elites themselves can govern the opposition through controlling this surrogate opposition, so to speak, the surrogate thing. The thing may not have been the opposition itself. It may have been something kind of neutral, kind of abstract, kind of whatever type of thing. But when it's controlled by the government, not necessarily the government, the elites, it becomes their puppet essentially, right? So this is a very good tool for maintaining the control. And in this way, dangerous thoughts dangerous to the elites, that is, can't mature enough, because immediately, almost the moment they surface, the moment they appear, they are intercepted by this already established truncated narrative that the elites have provided, right? So it's very beneficial for the elites to actually, kind of provide you anti-elite narratives, controlled by the elites themselves. Again, Marxism is the perfect example of this. Again, well, I'm not gonna talk about it anymore. But yeah, it's incredibly effective since people don't realize how much power this symbolism and archetypal thingies have, alright? So in this sense, you may also say that Hollywood itself is essentially a factory of meanings needed by the American hegemony, right? Needed to sustain American hegemony. And so the elites deliberately explore, through this mechanism, deliberately explore dangerous topics to deliver them in this sort of truncated, castrated form to the public, alright, to the viewer. And they're setting up essentially these kind of like booby traps, around any like dangerous subjects. So anyone who dares approach these dangerous subjects, they would at worst or at best, depending how you look at it, right, would fall in one of these booby traps prepared by the elites, one of their false semi-half type narratives, right? This is what I'm talking about. So yeah, so anything transcendent and intellectual and thus dangerous to the elites is intercepted in this way, right? So it can never be reached, essentially. So this is, if you think about it, this is suggestion, right? Masquerading as freedom. Like all this, you know, Hollywood creativity type of stuff. This is or suppression rather, you know, suggestion / suppression masquerading as freedom. And in this way, it's actually more effective than full actual suppression, because people think they are free to think whatever they want, but they actually aren't, because once they think about something, oh, actually there was this guy who was saying kind of the same thing. Let me kind of watch this guy, let me read this guy, let me, you know, engage with him some more. And then this guy kind of, you know, slightly kind of shifts you from the dangerous land to where the elites want you to be at. I mean, this sounds very conspiratorial, I realize, but like, what's like it's completely understandable. It's just mechanics, you know, mechanics of power. Like there's nothing inherently like I don't know, mysterious about it. It's very simple, actually, what I'm saying, right? Again, the main idea is, if you can't beat them, join them, right? If your opposition is against you, well, lead your own opposition, and thus they won't be against you anymore, right? It's a very simple idea, actually, in a nutshell. So yeah. It's the same idea of cooptation or recuperation that I've already explored in one of my previous videos, but I can't remember which one. And I remember I gave you this example of punk rock because it's kind of proverbial, but I don't remember which video was that. It could have been about how school kills opponents or something like that. Like, I'll link this one about schools in the description, where I basically say that if you want something to not be discovered by youth, you should put it in a school program, like a government public school program. Then young people would shy away from it like as fire. They would run away from it, right? So all the dangerous thinkers should be put in a school program like first, all right? Because then all the youth would think, it's lame. It's all that school is lame. I mean, come on. We're not going to read this. So yeah, put all the dangerous thinkers in school program. That's the best way to, you know, kind of Edgar Allan Poe type of way of dealing with, so nobody finds them, essentially, right? So yeah, so this phenomenon of cooptation or recuperation, when something that is explicitly against you, for example, you as capitalism, or you as the government, or you as the socialism, it gets integrated into your own system and becomes the part of your system, right? Just like, again, the punk rock was integrated into capitalism, right? Even though, as I've said, punk rock was initially a capitalistic endeavor, all right, in the very first place. But anyways, so I think another video I've dealt with this topic was Make Your Enemy Your Friend. I think that was its title. Again, I'll link it as well. But anyway, other examples of this dynamic would be, for example, this Anglo-American political system, like two-party system, where people think that by, let's say, voting for Trump, they're voting for something anti-establishment, which is, well, not very smart, let's put it this way. Like, a person, like, delegated by one of two monopolistic, like, not duopolistic, right, parties in a country is considered anti-establishment. I mean, that's really smart. That's some, like, 4-digit IQ, probably, right? So, yeah, that's very smart. So, anyways, returning to the general idea, again, there is this sentiment. I'm kind of returning to my very previous video about originality, not the very previous one, actually. The one I just published on YouTube a few days ago about originality, right? So, there is this adolescent view of things, again, and adolescence is, you know, like vigor, like power, energy, this kind of stuff, like what young people have, right? So, they have this sentiment that whatever has been done already is not worth doing anymore, which is, again, why I argue that a mature person would be more kind of okay with not being original, because a mature person considers something that has already been done multiple times a classic, right? Whereas an adolescent, they don't have such a word in their vocabulary. It's like what the oldies do, right? What the old folks do. Whereas for a mature person, it's classic. For an adolescent person, it's lame and what the old people do. We should do something else. But then again, as we've talked about in this video already, this whatever else is already intercepted by the elites anyway, right? Like all the new dangerous ideas are already recuperated, already co-opted into the existing system anyway. So what are you gonna do about it? Well, when you turn maybe 30, you will get enough brain power to realize that you were like playing along all along, but whatever. Let's not talk about this anymore. But yeah, there is this sentiment, and so there is again sort of an idea among like the creative people that no deep thinker would dare studying something that already has been studied, and in particular, something that, for example, a stupid Hollywood blockbuster has already shown. So when they, like a thinkers on their own, and they're just thinking, they're doing their thing, right? And they kind of, like some new idea is starting to creep up, and they kind of allow this idea to unfold, and then they think, wait, isn't this the same thing that the movie Matrix has shown already? And then like, okay, is this so silly? Is it so stupid that even a Hollywood producer would understand? And maybe it's not a good idea. Let's just not think about this anymore. So there is this sentiment as well, right? So it's not only that you are kind of intercepting the people that would like to follow your idea, you are also kind of, you know, kicking out all the people that could have developed this idea into something true, because they already see that this idea has been developed in thick air quotes before by stupid Hollywood producers, and therefore, well, it's probably a shitty idea, all right? So maybe they should not think about it too much. The deeper thinkers, the actual thinkers, that is, right? So it's kind of a win-win situation, right? For the elites, I mean. So whoever is on this dangerous for you path would follow you, and whoever is not, they would shy away from this path in the first place, right? So it's doubly effective in this sense. Yeah. Once again, like the movie Matrix is a perfect example of what I've talked about here. Like it's this recuperation of dangerous ideas. Like it's providing them this sort of castrated surrogate instead of real, whatever real means in this context. Like I hope you can feel it at the very least what I mean. That Matrix is not real, and the movie Matrix is not real. It's not some deep truth about the world. It's actually a plaster illustration of the truth, right? It's a flat projection of truth. I don't know, like it's a castrated and truncated version of truth, all right? As such, it is perfect though. I mean, it's perfectly well made. But yeah, watch my video about the Matrix, by the way. So yeah, once again, there are like, even like I've kind of listed kind of the negative sides of this thing, at least negative in the sense of prevention, right? Prevention of something that could happen to the elites, and which would not happen because all of these ideas have been intercepted successfully. But there is a positive side to this prevention as well. For example, to avoid something bad, like objectively bad by the whole of society, for the whole of society, not just the elites. For example, there is this new series, Civil War, right, in America. Also, like again, to prevent the Civil War, because once you show the Civil War, it's not gonna happen in reality, because people will say, we're already seeing this in series. Why would we do that, right? This is what I'm talking about. And like, this is why they're making this series. All right. So, I'm not necessarily saying Civil War would be objectively bad in the long run, for example, or objectively good in the long. I'm not saying any of those things. I'm just saying that making a series about this would make this much less probable. All right, and it's so obvious. I don't even know, like, how would I argument this? Like, just watch what I've just said in the last 10 minutes or whatever. 20 minutes? Whatever this video has been already. So yeah, yeah, that's why they're making this series. And by the way, I was thinking about Fallout, which is a series I've watched just now, like a day before yesterday, I think I watched the last episode. I really love the game, but I'm thinking about making a whole video about it, but I'm still thinking. I'll probably not talk about it anymore now, but it shows the aftermath of the nuclear war, right? So maybe it's a way of shying away from the nuclear war again. Like one thing we've had, and like think about it. It was produced by who? Jonathan Nolan, right? Who's the brother of Christopher Nolan. And if you've heard anything about Christopher Nolan recently, like half a year ago, he has made the movie called Oppenheimer, which deals with the start of a nuclear war, right? So we have Christopher Nolan dealing with start of the nuclear war, and half a year later, Jonathan Nolan dealing with the end of the nuclear war. And it's kind of suspicious. So maybe they feel, the Hollywood feels that the nuclear war is kind of inevitable, and they're trying to prevent it by kind of making this big effort, you know? Hopefully. Yeah. All right. So we've talked about the nonconformity of youth that kind of prevents the youth from like following the classic. They don't have this word in their vocabulary, but anyways, yeah, actually I've talked about politics enough, I think. Let's talk about, very briefly, about a much darker and deeper philosophical side of things. So I would actually claim that philosophers are the most dangerous people. Not philosophers, by the way, I'm completely safe. So philosophers are the most dangerous people because they create these attractors. You need a philosopher if you need a deep, good idea, all right? A deep thinker is needed when you need a good idea. By the way, watch my video about how to create a new idea, all right? So these attractors, right? What do I mean by attractor in this context? It's exactly these booby traps, right? So you're trying to get to pierce to true reality, so to speak, but you get this like kind of drawn into one of the attractors, one of the Matrix Hollywood movies, all right? So you never reach the true reality. So that's why philosophers are very strong, because they create these attractors which kind of catch all the unsuspecting flies along the way, all the unsuspecting 16-year-old boys, just like I was when I started reading Nietzsche, right? So yeah, it's pretty strong in terms of philosophers. Like, you know, Socrates was executed for, you know, doing bad stuff to youth, and this is kind of how philosophers end should be, right? If he's a good philosopher, like, it means he made quite a bit of false attractors for the youth. But anyway, so philosophers, essentially, what they perform, we're not even talking about governments, all of this is kind of below us. We're talking about the level of like centuries, right? Forgery of reality is what I would call it. It's actually what Nietzsche called, what philosophers do. It's forgery of reality. So they create these ideas, these philosophical abstractions, which they philosophers claim, are more real than reality itself, you know, it's kind of more real than real, kind of the replicant reality type of thing, right? And so a person is getting grabbed by this false attractor of this, again, plaster decoration made by philosophers, this plaster forgery of reality instead of the real reality. And so a person loses real reality. They lose sight of real reality. They get into hyper reality, right? Watch my video about hyper reality, by the way. If it's even about hyper reality. It may have been about something else. But anyway, yeah. That's why philosophers are very dangerous. And like, it's kind of the thing, right? Like, what is the ultimate reality? That's kind of the question we're asking here. And it's a very deep question in the sense that any thinker, what they can give to you at best is their version of false reality, right? We're kind of getting into some Buddhist kind of nonsense right here. Like, every word you say is a lie, essentially, which is kind of true, which is also paradoxical in itself, right? So whatever I conjure, whatever story I tell to you, it would be a lie because it's a story, right? It's not what the things are, actually. Because nobody knows what the things are, actually, because you have to be literally nobody in order to know the things how they are actually, to lose your point of view, so to speak. But then the things disappear because you can't see them anymore. So it's kind of like a whole terrible mess, right? Like, what are we gonna do here? But my point here is kind of a tragic idea that, like, whatever somebody tells you is a lie, all right? And in the context of this video, what I'm talking about is like you being intercepted by these new false narratives, whereas you think they are the road to freedom, essentially, but it's also a lie, right? It's again the main idea of Matrix movie, by the way. So yeah. So even the very desire to escape, let's say, the existing power structure is also its own power structure. Like, this very desire is its own power structure. It is its own attractor, if you wish. A desire to run away from an attractor is another attractor. You see the thing? It's so tragic, actually, if you think about it. Because, like, even when you desire to escape the box that someone painted around you, all right, to be able to see the sky and to enjoy the stars and be free and all that stuff. Remember that the sky and the stars and all that stuff was also already painted by someone else. This is the tragedy, the pure tragedy of this philosophizing, essentially, right? So, yeah. So, the true, and like, we're kind of returning to my video about originality, right? So the true originality, there's just no language to speak it out, you know? If you can't formulate something, it's not original anymore. So how do you express it? Well, creativity, you know, could be a mean of escape from this. Like, as of, again, hypothesized in my video, hegemony of art, even though I have my doubts about art per se now, but still, this is probably our best bet at this point, right? Hegemony of art. Watch the linked video in the description. So, Schopenhauer, for example, and Nietzsche followed him on this. They said that basically, like, music is the way, right? So, from a musical piece, like, by listening to it, you can write a story, but another person would write a different story, which means that music is a story, but it's kind of a multiple stories at once, right? So, different people can derive different stories from the same piece of music, which means music is essentially a meta story in a way, right? It's multiple stories in a single, I don't know how you put it, in a single piece, right? So that's why Nietzsche wrote The Birth of Tragedy from the Spirit of Music. That's why Schopenhauer said that music is the deepest of all the arts, right? It's the closest to the world's will. It's like something unspoken, yet unspoken, right? So it's the closest thing to reality that we can express and that we can hope to achieve, I guess. So I guess music is the answer, but I'm not sure, guys. I'm not sure. Thank you for watching. The eons are closing. If you wish to support me, please consider joining my Patreon. That is patreon.com/philosopher. See the link in the description. Or if you have a scientific theory of your own and you'd like my help in developing it, please join my alternative science coaching program, also available through Patreon.